What's poppin', guys? It's Maxify back with another top 5 video, and in this one, this is going to be my top 5 favorite comedy movies on Netflix. So just to clarify before we start the list, this is not going to include any stand-up comedy or comedy specials. This is all just going to be plot-driven feature comedy films. So all that out of the way, let's jump straight into the list with my number 5 spot, and this is going to be Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So this was a really overlooked movie when it first came out, and only really found success when it came onto streaming recently. And I think the reason for this is mostly to do with its style. This is a very uniquely constructed movie, especially in its visual direction. It has this vibrant, arcade-esque style to portraying its action and its ideas, and it's really unconventional for big blockbuster comedy movie like this, but it's really visually interesting. You can really feel that this movie was adapted from a comic book, and I don't think any other live action movie quite captures that feeling so well as this one does. The plot of this movie, though, is definitely a little bit predictable, and even though the movie does try to kind of make fun of or break down the cliches and tropes that come along with the rom-com genre, it definitely adheres a lot to that formulaic rom-com plot structure that we've seen a million times. So I guess the kind of formulaic plot doesn't quite live up to the intense visual presentation of this movie, but the way the story is told is so unique. It's just so different from any other movie really at all. It reminds me a little bit of Into the Spider-Verse in its comic style presentation, but it brings that to live action. And so anyone looking for a kind of off-the-wall rom-com that doesn't adhere to convention, I would definitely check out Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So coming in at our number 4 spot on today's list, guys, this is going to be Yes Man. Yes Man stars Jim Carrey as a bank loan officer who is kind of going through this midlife crisis and decides to become a yes man. Essentially, someone whose outlook on life is to challenge themselves to say yes to every opportunity and every question that's thrown their way. This concept, as you'd probably imagine, lends itself excellently to a comedy situation. And it lends itself especially well to Jim Carrey's acting style. And even though this is maybe one of Jim Carrey's tamer roles, especially if you compare it with his 90s comedies like The Mask or like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, he's absolutely excellent in this role of this high-energy, stop-at-nothing guy who just wants to make his life more interesting and take every opportunity he can to do so. This movie, just like Scott Pilgrim, though, does become a little bit formulaic, especially as the romance part of the movie becomes more prominent near the end. But if you are a fan of Jim Carrey's movies or his comedic style, you're definitely going to find yourself enjoying Yes Man. Anyways, guys, coming down to the number 3 spot, this is going to be The Disaster Artist. So The Disaster Artist is a look into the production of the infamous unintentional comedy movie, The Room.
I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
And it follows the journey of filmmaker Tommy Wiseau and actor Greg Sestero as they attempt to get this movie made. If you've seen or are familiar with The Room, which I am, you are definitely going to enjoy this movie, not only from a comedic perspective, but from a dramatic perspective as well. I think, though, that even if you haven't seen The Room, you're still going to find yourself absolutely dying laughing at this movie, especially as the character of Tommy Wiseau, who is played excellently here by James Franco. Franco obviously has a lot of passion for this story, and you can tell that in the way the film was put together. Both his direction and his performance as Tommy Wiseau are absolutely phenomenal. His performance especially it's hilarious. I mean, it's perfectly Tommy Wiseau. If you've seen The Room or are familiar with Tommy Wiseau, James Franco is Tommy Wiseau in this movie. And it's just a great tribute to the original movie, to The Room. I found myself laughing out loud at several points in this film, and I definitely recommend going and checking it out, especially if you're familiar with The Room. But even if you're not, The incredibly absurd true story and the performances of this movie are still absolutely hilarious. And now coming down to the number 2 spot in today's video, this is going to be Chef. Chef to me is a definitive feel-good movie. Favreau's writing and direction transform what's a pretty simple story into just a captivating display of equal parts humor and culinary expertise. His writing especially works really well in this setting. The movie has that kind of Marvel MCU style humor, and I think that obviously derives itself from Favreau's writing and direction. It's very reminiscent of the first 2 Iron Man films and Swingers before that, but his comedic style just works really well in this setting. But this movie's about a lot more than just cooking. It's about family, it's about work-life balance, and at points it's about criticism. And this movie brings up a really important part of criticism, not only as it relates to food criticism, but to criticism of all kinds. And as someone who's involved themselves in criticism, that part of the movie especially spoke to me. I highly recommend Chef as a feel-good movie, and if you like the humor of the Marvel movies, you're going to especially like this movie. Just one thing, do not watch Chef on an empty stomach, or at the very least, have some popcorn out as you're watching this. This movie is going to make you very hungry. And finally, coming down to my number 1 spot, the best comedy on Netflix right now, May 2021, has got to be Superbad. So on the surface, Superbad is a teen comedy about 3 friends who desperately want to get laid before the end of their senior year in high school. But what makes this movie so impressive to me is that it's so much more than a comedy movie. Really, the story itself is not a comedy. In truth, this is a bittersweet coming-of-age story about leaving behind childhood and leaving behind your friends as you grow up into the real world. Surprisingly, these complex themes are captured perfectly in this comedy movie, not only in its story, but in its humor as well. This is some of the best comedy writing I've ever seen put to film. The comedy comes not from the writers placing our characters in some outlandish situation where they can react to it comedically, but from our characters reacting to situations that are grounded in reality. This movie's comedy is built on its performances. Seth Rogen, Michael Cera, and Jonah Hill especially all just sell the comedy of this movie so well with their over-the-top hysterical line deliveries and crazy awkward social interactions. If you're a senior or an upperclassman in high school, which I know a lot of my viewers are, you're gonna find this movie not only ridiculously hilarious, but also weirdly relatable. Superbad is the pinnacle of teen comedy, and it's definitely worth checking out. And that, guys, is going to wrap up the list. I encourage you to go check out these movies. They're all on Netflix as of right now, May 2021. If you like this, please consider showing your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Look forward to new videos coming very soon, including my review of James Wan's horror classic, The Conjuring. I've been Maxify. This has been Maxify Top 5s, and I'll see you in the next one.